I want to take just a few moments of your time to share with you an exciting project that we have going with the charity for the rest of the year. Before I go any further with that, I want to show you why we are doing this project and who we are helping with it. This child's name is Jane, and we found Jane just 1 kilometre away from where we are building our new children's village, which is a 9-hour drive from our existing one. That area has nobody educating, caring for, or trying to assist children with special needs. Jane's mum has to go to work, and so the only option she felt she had to keep her daughter safe was to peg her to the floor, as you see here. This, of course, is not a way of life for anyone, and Jane has lived that way the whole of her life. What we are trying to do is make sure that we can build a solution that's functional for children like Jane. To do that, we need to raise $200,000 by the end of the year. And to do that, we are hoping to get 2,000 volunteers who will agree to fundraise $25 a month, or if you are blessed enough to be able to share that without fundraising, of course, that's an option, every month for the rest of the year. If 2,000 people can commit to doing this, I know, because I have a working blueprint of the village that we currently have, that I can build a working solution that will be able to provide a loving home for 150 special needs children in that location. I also can say that every dollar will go towards construction. Every dollar. And this is a promise that I know I can make, because after 10 years, I think I'm probably better seated than most human beings to fix this problem. If you want to know more about the project, feel free to reach out, or you can visit the link at the bottom of the screen, www.sharetanzania.com/2000 strong. There you'll find out all the information you need. Thank you for the love and support. We can't do what we do for these children without you. God bless, guys. Bye. There is a lot of talk about the World Economic Forum, about the potential that it is masking a satanic agenda. It is masking a plot to control and influence humanity in a certain direction. A direction that excludes the will, the voice, and the presence of God. I want to explore that. And if you are a human being out there who doesn't get on that road with the notion of God and Christ, or the light and the dark playing it out on this planet, I can show you with this video, by the end of it, how you can see and make your own decision if this is a satanic organization with a satanic goal. And not only that, but to furnish you with the capacity to look at other organizations or other movements in the world and determine if there is an element of that within it, an element of the opposition of the light within it. The World Economic Forum, for those who don't know, is a private, which is not governed, organization of the most powerful, wealthy and elite men, women and organizations, companies, monarchs in the world. They have an agenda for the world, and they have resources that matters. They have power and influence in the world that matters to humanity. It is right that we human beings that are not privy to that and not seeing what is going on inquire. What is the goal here? What is happening? However, before we progress with the video, what I want to show you is not to go in and get caught up in the 3D details of individual personas. Because if we are to persist in sharing and saying there's a concern here, that there's some darkness going to manifest from this potentially, we have to look to the notion that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but spiritual wickedness in high places. This is a biblical term. And so if there's a spiritual influence present, we should not look at it from the physical. We should look at it from further out, from our spiritual capacity as human organisms, which we have. Some may feel we don't have, because theirs is locked. It hasn't been cultivated and nurtured, but it is accessible to every man and every woman. To do this, I have to go slowly, because first we have to define important elements of this. What would be a satanic goal, and what would be a system that's run by the opposite? I would say inside our human story and our human family, we have a spectrum. And that spectrum runs from the awareness of the presence, the voice and the will of God. And I am a man at that end of the spectrum. I have heard God's voice. I have known it. It's not a belief. I don't ponder, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I know it. I've heard it. I followed that voice blindly to East Africa, having never ever been there, never thought of going there. But I was certain it was the voice of God who said to go there. And with no money in my pocket, many years later, after that, we have now seen a village manifest for special needs children, an animal rescue, thousands of kids helped out of child labour and into school, because I heard the voice of God. And it's not always clear audible, it comes in other ways. And so at that end of the spectrum, you have those who know God's presence, know the power of God, and know the voice of God. The other end of the spectrum are humans who know the voice of another God as they perceive it, a higher dimensional force that they make communication with, that they make pacts with, that they worship. That's the two ends of the spectrum. Humans who actually know and have an intimate relationship with God and God's will. The God of the will of unconditioned love. Here we have others who have a different view. And this God that they serve says and claims that it wishes to become God and can become God by technological advancement, by the pride and arrogance of wanting to control it all. We have different types of humans, but at either end of the spectrum, those are there. In between, you have humans very close to the will of God, even enacting it, but they don't know even that they are doing so. They aren't aware that they're with God, but they are still, by the very loving nature that they are, by the very vibratory state that they are in, their open-heartedness, their soul is aligned to the presence of the will of unconditioned love, and they help to build a world, and their intelligence, therefore, is animated by unconditioned love. by something deeper and more meaningful than selfish ambition. And they don't know God necessarily. They may follow nudges, intuition, they're not sure. Others just do it for the sake of goodness. They are there. Here you have humans who are doing things that they adore the world and they worship it, and they have no notion of God. Some of those humans, they don't necessarily look like a typical world worshipper. It's not like they're satanic and they're out there abusing so on and so forth for all this happens. It's not like they are out there set on that. It can look very different. They can be in immense power, immense wealth, and they are a pawn of those who know, who commune, who access. And their love of the world and their arrogance to never hear the will of God leaves them down here as a pawn of those who know, and beyond it, the force that they know. Those humans, they love the world in a different way. It is about their will, their 3D perception, their self-image based upon the 3D matrix of reality that we are in. Their own intelligence, the persona they've built with their memories. Its will. That's their love of the world. In no man's land, which the vast majority of humans are in, we are holding pockets of energy. And those pockets of energy are our money, our resources, our time, our attention, and most vitally and importantly, our soul essence. And in that no man's land, where you are just moving without much control of yourself, of your life, you are surrendering that energy in one direction or the other. And most of the time, due to the suffering of being in no man's land, we surrender that energy to the manifestations in this reality of the fallen ones, we can call it, the fallen God that wishes to influence this space. Many humans are there. They may have the odd arising of the presence of unconditioned love, of love, but their addiction to the world because of their lack of wholeness, which is found on the other end of the spectrum, which is to be awakened and free in the moment, leaves them surrendering their energy, transferring their energy and feeding the manifestation of the fallen ones, for they feed into the pleasures, the entertainments, their attention, they sell it. They sell the one-off gift of life and its time into the matrices that it has created, and it does so to satiate the void that it feels in that no man's land of not connecting to source. These are the spectrums that we have, and you lean one way or the other, but the vast majority are in no man's land, and sadly, for all the many in no man's land even know God. They may even attend church, etc. But they are not, as Yeshua called it, born again. And now we need to define what is meant by born again. And let me say this. If you are a Christian, and you have been told by the Christian system that you are born again, if I were to come to your home today and say, for the next 30 days, I want you to put your entertainment, your distraction, your own will, your own hobbies, your own desires, your relationships in the world, your socializing in the world, the political narratives, the mainstream media, I want you to take all of that and put it before God's will in your life for the next month. Now write down a list of things that are going to change. And the vast majority, it exposes the reality that they are still playing out inside this no man's land identity where they haven't been born into the full power a human has, and have been given the idea they are. However noble it is, however wonderful it is to make that decision, to try to live by those higher ideals, all of those other elements of yourself that you carry as an identity within you, God's will does not need them to manifest in this world. And I am a man who knows God's voice. It is not hearsay. It's not belief. I know God's voice, and you can know it too. And it's non-conditional. If you are a Christian, God's will is supposed to be the priority in your life. Now, inside our system, we have endless narratives on the world from people, philosophers, Christian speakers, spiritual teachers, etc. But what we tend to lack is training for the most important element, to take human organisms and teach those organisms how to know this end of the spectrum, to know the will of unconditioned love and the voice of God to be able to move in the organism. If we are to say there is going to be a satanic agenda, what is that based on? What is the want of a satanic agenda? It's to lead humanity down a road where the voice and the will of God is not known to it, where it's ignored. And this is where it can look peculiar, because good people can do that, can ignore that. And when I say the voice of God ignored, I'm not talking about a voice in the clouds coming down and talking to you. I'm talking about that spectrum of the will of unconditioned love, which is found in the freedom of true rebirth, the awakened state, the eternal now, the here, the present moment, the open heart state of spiritual awakening, animating the intelligence and the activity of the human organism. And when it comes in and speaks, it knows where it needs the organism that you are. For now, however, most of us are living, believing that an image we created in our mind owns the organism, and that image plays into that end of the spectrum. The satanic agendas of the world, they want the will of unconditioned love. In Europe, in the West, around the world, that will of unconditioned love has been pointed at commonly with the term Christ. That's what Christ represents, the will of unconditioned love and compassion for every human being, for every man, woman and child. They want to cut that off. That is a satanic agenda. And in cutting that off, in making human beings not surrendered to that will of that updraft of unconditioned love known when the self-image, where the persona falls away, the persona becomes rampant and becomes the dominant will, and you play into the world. You ignore that. And you can't know the compassion there. You can't know the compassion when you're caught up inside the persona and the self-image of the 3D realm, 3D matrix. Because it conditions love. It conditions love based on its memories. Here and now in the eternal presence of God, the awakened state, the rebirth, you do not condition love so easily. Because you recognize as it's coming through you, you are deserving of this. But if you let the persona come in, it will say, maybe you're not. Because it wants to put its own opinion and condition and arrogance and pride into it. And so what does this have to do with the World Economic Forum? A satanic agenda wants to separate you from the will of unconditioned love, the reborn state. Any system on the planet that is not speaking to that, it is not speaking to finding the space inside each man, woman, child that opens up so the intelligence and the activity of the body is stimulated by the presence of a higher love, of an unconditioned love, and the will of it, and the voice of God which is known there. Any system that is not doing that is a system that has fallen into the arrogance of its own intelligence and persona. That's the system largely that we are in. We see the system we are in. It is filled with that arrogance, the intelligence, the activity, the manifestations of mankind. They are rarely, they are thankfully plentiful, but rarely in the dominant steering of humanity, in the political agendas, the wars. They are not manifest in the creation of weapons and the creation of economic warfare. They are not manifest. Nor are they manifest in the potentiality of maneuvering humanity to suit the will of that spectrum. They don't care how they get that energy to manifest their will. They don't care for truth. Truth required for you to be aligned to that end of the spectrum, not required to be aligned to that. They don't care what they say. And so it is right that humanity asks questions about things. The World Economic Forum has said you will own nothing and be happy off the back of the coronavirus pandemic. A whole reset of the way the world works off the back of a pandemic. The world is right to question, could that pandemic have been influenced by certain parties in the world to bring this about? When you see a system that is run by that which is born again, then we would prioritize ensuring our leaders are born again. There would be set rules. Before you come into office, you have to fast. You have to humble yourself. You have to make sure this human organism empties its brain of the self-image based in mind. It must. For that is not needed for the will of God, the voice, the will of unconditioned love to move in the human organism. It's not needed for the wisdom and the potency of God to move in the human organism. It must be brought out. It must be put to sleep. The human organism is not owned by the persona. The persona is generated by the system you're in. The system you're in has been built on top of the sovereign freedom that we can access when we let go of that identity fed to us. And when you do let go, what remains is this field of connectivity. In the poem by Thich Nhat Hanh, he said, "I am the 12-year-old girl, refugee, who jumps into the ocean from the boat after being raped. I am also the pirate who raped the 12-year-old girl, whose heart is not yet open enough to know true love." He's referencing that field. And what happens when you connect to that field of true awakening, your sovereign power, there you will enter the state where the voice of God can move you. Compassion can move you. The World Economic Forum is not leading you there. It is running on a space of arrogance. Some unconsciously are playing into that because they have just forgotten what it is to be sovereign in the will of unconditioned love, the will of Christ. Others are, even as far as I've seen, communicating with a higher dimensional force. And that higher dimensional force was denoted as the fallen ones. And they are here. They have great technology as well. And there are other forces at play. I have been very clear. I have had a conversation. I have a gift of being a seer. I have a gift of being able to remove entities from other human beings. These are manifestations in this human that we can all manifest as functionalities. Not that we manifest it, spirit manifests it through the human organism when the organism's identity is rooted in the presence of God and God's will, not in its own selfish ambition and its worldly identity. I have seen and spoke to higher dimensional forces, positive and negative. I have seen physical manifestations in this world of technology that makes no sense at the end of a 15-day water fast, moving in a dimension that's linked to our own but not quite there. There are influences here that you can't quite grasp. We see these families ruling forever. What if this realm is of no importance to the souls that embody those families? What if in their dimension, just beyond this one, they live a far longer life and all they need to do is keep switching the body to lead humanity to that ultimate goal, which we are very alarmingly close to, where children are born and the will of God is not even in their periphery. The voice of God, being taught how to know God's voice, which is possible. I can teach any human how to awaken God's voice in their life. I can do it. They have to be tough. They have to put themselves through some things. They've got to detox the world from themselves. But I can do it. That means anyone can do it. If anyone can do it, why aren't we doing it? Because the system we are being led down is leading us towards a specific space. And that specific space can therefore be said to be satanic, because it excludes the will of unconditioned love, the will of Christ. It excludes educating our children how to know that will, and it tells our children, ignore it, focus only on your own intelligence, and forget the foundation of what animates that intelligence. If it's desperation, if it's desire, whatever it might be, forget it, just so long as your intelligence is there doing it. And of course that feeds in to the game of this end of the spectrum, because that's exactly what that end of the spectrum is doing. That's what it is doing from its dimension and its capability. And so what's its interest in this realm? Energy. Energy. To challenge that end of the spectrum. So with that said, I'll let you look at the World Economic Forum and their goals and tell me where in among there are any stipulations that their members must somehow invite the will of unconditioned, the will of God into what they do. That there is any notion that they can commune with God and hear, if this is the correct manifestation. If there's any notion of, let's make sure that all of us, before we progress any further, cultivate compassion over division, cultivate compassion, true unconditioned love for the future of humanity. Let us all make sure we cultivate that before we go forward with this immense power that we have. Or is it just the arrogant, selfish individual ambitions getting together, saying we don't need that, we know what's best? Forget the will of the all. Forget that access to that wisdom which is found in that compassion. We'll do it. Yeah, and you can see. You can see. So I'll let you make your own judgment. Because hopefully I've adequately furnished you with the tools to see clearly through all of the bull. What a Christ system looks like and an antichrist system looks like. It's very obvious. And the sad thing is, many are in an antichrist system believing it's that, and it's not. It's not. And so let us be cautious that the energy we hold is fueling the manifestation of that side and not that. That means the journey starts with you as an individual, to get over your desires, to get over your worldly pleasures, to start feeding into the light's will, not merely to resist the coordinated plan of the darkness. This is no battle strategy. The darkness should have to resist the plan of the light. As long as people just keep, oh, I can see what the dark's doing, let me resist that. That's never going to bring any resistance, because it's never going to bring any strength to the light. Because you have an original opportunity to create originally as this human shape you are, as this human organism talking to you had. And you should grab that with everything you have and make it happen. That was all. God bless, guys. Be well.